My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way, because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive. I am a 33 years old female, have been engaged to my fiancé, 37 male, for 5 months. We don't share finance because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with the 30%, that's why. He acts as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times he has tricked me to pay for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food. And in the middle of the meal he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, you have enough money, you could pay for everyone's food, 30%, remember? I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friend's food. I told him I went home, then stopped replying. An hour later he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate and childish for sneaking out like that and leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's gonna be married to. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over, we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, "Okay, boomer." Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, "Okay, boomer," to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he co-owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went. I'm 23. I've known I was adopted all along. For whatever reason, I became obsessed with learning more about my birth parents at age 13. I was told all my life that my parents met both of my birth parents before I was officially adopted. My mom was white from South America and my dad was white from Italy. They specified these two locations to explain why I had tan skin. As I was growing up, certain things about my physical makeup made me more curious about my birth parents. My hair was kept short as a kid, but as a teen I wanted to experiment. I grew it out and it grew out curly. Big curls, but still curly. This upset my parents, so they asked that I not grow it out. When I moved away for college, I began to let it grow again. I met my girlfriend in school. She is Black American, so she also helped me care for it. She once braided my hair before I FaceTimed my parents, who lost it on me for wearing it that way. Throughout my time in school I still searched for my birth mom, but would always come up empty. My girlfriend hinted that there must have been a mistake with the information, even down to the name my parents claimed I had before they adopted me. She gifted me a DNA kit on my birthday that I didn't get around to until the lockdown hit. I didn't think anything would come of it because my parents weren't American, so I didn't know if it would work that way. So I sent it out of boredom and got my results weeks later, which have changed everything. I'm Black and Middle Eastern. I have light skin and my curl pattern is so loose that I hadn't considered it a sign before. I have ancestral ties to Iran, which can explain a more European facial structure. I'm sorry for my wording, I'm still learning. I sent my GF a screenshot and she called me right away. We were both stunned, though she long suspected. I tried to believe that my parents were innocently misinformed, but my girlfriend kept pointing out the inconsistencies. My parents claimed to have met my birth parents, therefore they couldn't have mistaken them for white. I confronted my parents, who became enraged at me for doing a DNA kit. I was very angry, yelling, swearing. They robbed me of my identity and hindered my search with their lies. My mom told me through tears that my racial background comes with a stigma that I passed, so she wanted me to have an easier life fitting in. My dad yelled at me that I had to abandon what I just learned. I rage broke my phone and left. My siblings have been hitting me up on social media, reprimanding me for being upset because our parents' reasoning is sound. I do pass, I did have an easy life. I'm not asking to be part of a struggle all of a sudden. I just don't think I should have been lied to, and I think their reasoning is bullshit and racist. I'm just supposed to act like 10 years of me searching with the wrong info isn't that big of a deal? My parents admit that my mom was Black. My oldest sister also recalls seeing my mom at some point. Both verify that she was Black. Yes, they could be lying again. I have plans to continue to look into my background. My girlfriend was very hurt by their statements, so I chose to keep us both away from them. I don't understand how. I'm angry about being lied to and how that lie has made my effort into finding my birth parents completely void, while also rewriting my heritage. That's my girlfriend's stance as well. I'm tan enough that going to an all-white school still got me called slurs. Whatever issues my parents were trying to shield me from, it didn't work. Maybe this is a lie that I bought into alone. 2 of my siblings are trying to be supportive. I deactivated my Facebook and unfollowed some people on Instagram. I can't entertain the argument that I should forgive my parents and move on. I'm not there yet. I get that it makes me ungrateful for feeling this way. I don't hate them, I'm just really upset and disappointed in their decisions.